'cause I see the born of no return. Just ahead now, can't you see we're rushing for the end? I see the point of no return. Now see the point of no return. It's just ahead.
Well, good evening. It's Monday again, March 10th, 2014. You're listening to Wide Awake News on the RINF Radio Network. My name is Gary Hendershot, and for about the next hour, I'm going to be barking at the moon. Are you all ready for your new carbon tax? I understand they're going to have a late night session tonight, making sure that all you evil hippies and yuppies out there riding around in them SUVs pay your fair share to make sure that the seals and the polar bears have plenty of ice up there in the north section. You know, that's their job, to make sure they protect the environment from you folks with your SUVs. So just open your wallet and get ready. It's coming. On December 14th of 2012, the official narrative goes that a 20-year-old feller named Adam Lanza fatally shot 20 children and 6 adult staff members in a mass shooting a mass murder at Sandy Hook Elementary School in the village of Sandy Hook in Newtown, Connecticut. It was the second deadliest shooting by a single person in American history, followed closely by the only one surpassing it was the 2007 Virginia Tech massacre. My daughter was going to school at Virginia Tech when that happened. That was a little too close to home for comfort. The incident at Sandy Hook has prompted a renewed debate about gun control in the United States and a proposal for new legislation banning the sale and manufacture of certain types of semi-automatic firearms. Basically, anything semi-automatic, anything that holds more than 10 rounds of ammunition, including some popular .22 plinking rifles, are basically on the table right now in Connecticut. In November of 2013, a report issued by the Connecticut State's Attorney's Office concluded that the perpetrator, Lanza, acted alone and planned his actions, but no evidence collected provided any indication as to why he did so or why he targeted Sandy Hook. And yes, there's going to be a bunch of folks out there who are going to talk about how, there's no evidence that anybody was killed and so on and so forth. Believe me, I've heard all the various theories about Sandy Hook. And to be honest with you, I don't know what happened there. I have absolutely no idea. And a lot of people yapping their gums about it, chances are they don't know about it either. They've got their pet theory of how it happened, and hey, they are entitled to their opinion. But, we press on. The scary part about it is that, as our good friend Eric Holder would say, you just can't waste a good disaster. And whatever happened at Sandy Hook, it is being put out there as an excuse to restrict your right to keep and bear arms. Now, the right of an American citizen to keep and bear arms was not a privilege given you by the government. It's a natural right to protect yourself from predators. Lions have teeth and claws. Most critters out there have some means to protect themselves. And in a society such as we live in, where violence happens all too often, unless you all of a sudden grow some big teeth and claws, about the only sane and rational means you have available to you to protect yourself is with a firearm. Now, I know there's people out there who could probably karate dance their way out of any situation, but you know, for most folks, for average folks, about the only thing available that's going to stop an aggressor is a firearm. The government did not grant the right to keep and bear arms, and they have no right to infringe upon that right. It is a natural right that you are graced by your Creator, or whatever you think is your right to be alive. You are provided the right to maintain that life using whatever means is necessary. But in Connecticut, they've decided that certain types of very popular firearms that are commonly available, are going to have to be registered. There's a fella in Connecticut named John Sinque, C-I-N-Q-U-E. I don't know this guy. Have no idea what axe he has to grind. But he apparently expressed the thoughts of many in Connecticut when he stood up and said basically, look, you can pass whatever kind of crazy law you want, but if it is repugnant to my constitutional guarantee that my right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, I'm going to ignore it. And apparently, he's not the only one. Apparently, the lion's share, some say as many as 90% of those in Connecticut who have weapons in their possession that would be required to be registered under this new Connecticut law, have decided to thumb their nose at the law and potentially become Class D felons by refusing to register weapons that were purchased perfectly legal, owned perfectly legal, and now, all of a sudden, with the stroke of a pen from some ivory tower, are going to become illegal. Now, apparently this fella, Sinque, has come under some verbal assault. And apparently one of the verbal assaults pressed upon him was in a Twitter conversation with someone who represented themselves as a Connecticut law enforcement officer. This fella tweeted to Sinque, I give my left nut to bang down your door and come for your gun. Isn't that precious? Now, for those watching this with the live video feed, I've got a picture of this fella, Sinque, over my shoulder. This guy's a veteran. He served his nation admirably. He's a fireman. he's got kids, he's got a home, he's got a wife. He has every right in the world to be in a position to protect his own life, his family, and his property from any comer. Fellow pictured here is one of their local politicians, a guy named Yacarino. Now, this guy Yacarino has, was apparently a history teacher at one point, and in a conversation with news reporters justifying this push for this new gun control law in Connecticut, came out and said, "Oh, no. The Second Amendment was put in the Constitution so that the colonists could kick the ass of the British." This guy was a history teacher. This guy was now he's an elected official. Is that the history that he was teaching our kids? For those of you who do not realize it, the Constitution was written a decade after we kicked the British ass. Okay, the Constitution was well thought out, reasonably well worded, and defines the restrictions that the people expected the government to be bound by. One of the top 10, preceded only by the right to speak your mind, was the right to defend yourself. It was specifically declared in the Constitution that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. They didn't say may not be infringed. See, if they'd have said may not, words mean things. If they had said may not be infringed, that would leave them a little wiggle room, okay? If they had said may not be infringed, that would have meant, well, under certain circumstances, we might restrict your right to keep and bear arms. But they didn't say may not be infringed. They used the very specific word shall not be infringed. Now, if you go to Black's Law Dictionary, you will find that when they say shall not, that means under no circumstances. I mean, frankly, by the letter of the law, you are perfectly entitled to have your very own neighborhood nuke if you are wealthy enough to be able to afford to keep and maintain one. More power to you if you decide to pursue that right. I don't think I'd want one of those things around. But as far as a good quality AR-15 and a good quality shotgun and maybe a couple of good pistols, yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable. I couldn't afford to build the silo for the missile, so the nuke, it's not practical. I can't fit it in a holster. My yard just I couldn't put a silo out in my backyard. I think it's against the restrictive covenants in the property I own. But, there are some practical limitations. But hey, you want to own a tank? In theory, you should be able to. You want to own a machine gun? Technically, there should be no infringement. There should be no impediment against you owning a machine gun. Here again, I'm not sure how practical it would be. Can you imagine the weight of carrying enough ammunition to keep one of those things going? Talk to somebody who's been in the military and had to feed a machine gun in a battle. They'll tell you what it's like. Now, I'm not sure that's really practical. But, sane, reasonable firearms that an average person should be able to maintain and handle properly shall not be infringed. We don't know what's going to happen in Connecticut. Right now, they're saying, look, if you don't register those firearms, we're going to send a cop to your door. The big concern with registration is that in every case, registration has led to confiscation. Shall not be infringed. Connecticut, I'm sorry, but your gun control law breaks the bullshit meter. You know, when the news becomes the news, sometimes I think we've gone a little bit too far. There's a reporter on RT named Abby Martin, who recently has gotten both accolades and criticisms because she reports for Russia Today, and she actually went on the air and said, hey, you know, I think Russia's making a big mistake moving troops into Crimea. She's entitled to her opinion, and as far as I can tell, it looks like RT is being supportive of her right to express her concerns over Russia making moves into Crimea. Crimea, for those of you who never studied geography, it's a kind of a jutting peninsula that comes down a little south of Ukraine. And if you've read the news recently, you know that Ukraine's been in the news because they now have a I don't know what to call it. The United States considers them the legitimate government in Ukraine, but it appears to have been a coup d'etat financed by EU and American interests. Now, how that qualifies as a constitutional government, I'm not really sure. It appears that the constitutionally elected government was tossed out on their ear, and a new gang of thieves has basically imposed themselves upon the people of Ukraine. Russia has moved into Crimea, which is just a little bit south of Ukraine and technically is Ukrainian territory, more than likely to protect their military assets in that area. Crimea was always very close to Russia, going back to the 1700s, going back to Catherine the Great in Russia. Crimea was always very closely associated with Russia, and most of the people in Crimea are Russian speakers and identify with Russian nationality. There is now a move in Crimea to secede from Ukraine, and some within Crimea basically to protect themselves from what they see as a neo-fascist, neo-Nazi type regime taking hold in the rest of Ukraine. They're talking seriously about wanting to make it official and become part of Russia. Okay. So the U.S. decides that they don't like the guy who's in charge of Ukraine. They finance an overthrow, so he's out. Certain regions of Ukraine are very closely affiliated with Russia, dependent on Russia, in fact, and identify themselves as ethnically Russian, linguistically Russian. These people within the Ukraine are scared to death that what they're seeing taking over in parts of Ukraine is a form of resurrected Nazism. They would much rather be associated with the crooks they know than this new gang of thieves who they are not very confident of. So it's hard to say. I mean, how do we here in America judge for those in Ukraine how their nation should be organized? Now, our leadership seems to think they have every right in the world. They seem to think they have the right to hand pick who's going to run Ukraine. I'm not sure what gives them that right, but they seem to think they've got it. A couple of additional quick notes on that. Our good friend Dick Cheney says that we should not take a military option off the table in dealing with the Russians. Yeah, hey, those boys really got weapons of mass destruction. Unlike Saddam Hussein, they know how to use them. And, if you go toe-to-toe with the Russians, it's going to hurt. Another interesting development, it seems that the Ukrainian gold reserves have been moved out of Ukraine and into the vaults at the Federal Reserve in New York for safekeeping. I think that the Ukrainians probably should have talked to the Germans before they agreed to do that, but, who am I? I'm just another old guy with straw for brains. I don't know what's going on over there. I mean, I guess it seemed perfectly reasonable, the Federal Reserve. That's the safest place in the world for your money, right? Right? I'm hearing the bumper music in the background, so I'm going to have to bug out of here for just a moment or two while the network sells some product. Be back right after these important commercial announcements. Stand by. And we're back from that blatantly commercial deviation from the programming here. To the folks in the chat room, somebody in chat asked me what I was going to talk about tonight, and I tried to post a whole bunch of links in there to all the various articles that I'm sitting here staring at. And apparently the message was too big, and Chat Tango has banned me from posting anymore. So I'm not sure what that's all about. Let's see here. Back to the news. March 2011, a strike in North Waziristan, that's in Pakistan, killed Malik Duad Khan, whose son Nur Khan has taken legal action against the UK government. A strike in October 2001 in a car and a house in North Waziristan. Apparently, Waziristan is a popular place to drone. Pakistan, it killed Tariq Aziz and Walid Ullah, two teenagers on their way to play football. October 2012, strike in North Waziristan again that killed Mamana Bibi, a 67-year-old grandmother, as she picked vegetables in the field by her home. Bottom line is, a lot of these drone strikes that the United States and our friends in Britain seem to be thumping their chest about, like they're such big bad boys, have killed a lot of innocent civilians. Now, the tendency for these governments are that, anybody who happened to be in the bombed out area who was within, 15 to 60 was considered a hostile combatant of some sort or another, and they just write them off as a dead insurgent who they were, purposefully going after to get. But in fact, proof is, overwhelming that these drone strikes are an indiscriminate form of terrorism perpetrated by the government who claims to represent you. They are doing these things with money that they extort from you. They are murdering innocent brown people who never did nothing to you with your money and in your name. And yeah, that one there tips the scales on the bullshit meter. But the UN expert overseeing the use of armed drones has demanded greater accountability and transparency by those states using them, including public investigations into allegations of civilian casualties. A fellow by the name of Ben Emerson, UN Special Rapporteur on the Promotion and Protection of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms, investigated 37 recent drone strikes in countries in Yemen. He noted a sharp rise in strikes and a significant number of civilian casualties since the end of 2013. Again, you have to take reports like this with kind of a skeptical eye. You would hope that someone would be watching the watchers. You would hope that some authority would be able to get the government, who says they represent you, to act in a more sane and rational fashion. Though, to be honest with you, I'm highly suspicious when it comes out of the United Nations. Now, this fella Emerson, he might be a good man who recognizes an unfortunate fact. At the very least, he's brought some attention to it. So on that score, I guess I owe him some thanks. But whenever the source is the UN, my radar goes on. Somehow I think that they'll put it off in committee, and by the time the committee comes out with their report, a whole lot more innocent brown people are going to be blown up by drones that you're paying for. Got to watch my blood pressure. This is my little favorite segment. Every week I try to, I go through all the available news to see, hey, did anything new and exciting happen in the wild and wonderful land of Obamacare? As regular listeners know, I love Obamacare. Thank you, Obama, for giving me free health care. Turns out that numbers signing up for Obamacare have, shall we say, been disappointing. The last confirmed numbers I saw would indicate that only about 1% of those eligible for Obamacare have actually signed up. They haven't published any numbers since late December, early January. I think they were embarrassed at the time, and they're scared to publish any updated numbers. We'll just have to see. And of course, those who are signing up for Obamacare are those who really, really, really are desperate to get health care. I mean, they're old people like me who are not in terribly good health or have some sort of pre-existing condition, which Obamacare is supposed to be able to cover for them. So they are the highest risk type of signees. They're not the young, 20 to 30-year-olds that Obamacare was supposed to extort money from to pay for all the old farts who can't, afford the health care that they need. Those people are not signing up in droves. So needless to say, the insurance companies who expected to make a ton of dough off Obamacare are seriously disappointed. So guess what's going to happen now? Yeah, you got it. It looks like at least two insurance companies, WellPoint and Humana, will receive bailouts to the tune of $5.5 billion next year in a move that affordable healthcare opponents are calling a bailout. But of course, those who are proponents of the law say, hey, this was all anticipated ahead of time. We knew there'd be some shaking out time here, and that, we had to protect the insurance carriers because we knew there was going to be some rough edges around this, and we had it written right into the law that they would, be covered just in case things didn't go as we'd hoped. I love Obamacare. Don't you? Are you about pissed off yet? And yeah, the BS meter's getting a real workout tonight, I tell you. Have you signed up for your Obamacare yet? I'm getting ready to do my taxes. I gotta do my taxes come April. I'm one of those fellas who always owes. When it comes time to pay taxes, I got to write the guy a big bad check. And I am not real thrilled about writing that check, so I usually wait until the last bloody minute to do it. I understand that this year, for the first time, I'm going to have to pay some kind of penalty because I don't want to be associated with this Obamacare nonsense. What have you decided to do? I mean, you're going to go ahead and open your wallet and buy a health insurance plan that appears to be pretty much worthless, or are you just going to pay the fines? I'm hearing the bumper music, so I'm going to have to step aside for a moment while they sell some more products. I'll be back in just a moment. We'll talk about some more subjects here. Okay, we're back from the last break of the evening. Let's see here. What have I got? I've got about 12 minutes to wrap it up, and holy cow, I've still got a lot of stuff to get through. Like I was saying, I got banned earlier from the Wide Awake News Chatango window because I tried to post in there links to all the articles I was going to try to get through tonight, and apparently the message was too big, and Chatango banned me from posting anymore in that window. Oh well. Life's like that. We take it as it comes. Keep an eye on this issue with Ukraine. Right? There are those within your government who really, really, really think that starting up the Cold War with Russia is a great idea because there's a lot of people here in the United States and in Russia that made a hell of a lot of money during the Cold War period, and they're really kind of missing that revenue stream. And boy, if they could get, Russia and the United States, going head to head in some kind of an arms race or, crazy stuff, it would be very much to their benefit. And they'd find a way to make you, your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren pay for it. Keep an eye on that one. It's kind of scary. I mean, what you hope is that, some idiot doesn't make a stupid mistake that gets misinterpreted by the other side, and all of a sudden it turns from a Cold War into a very hot war. It could be very, very, very scary. I kind of want to talk about that airplane that went down, but I'm sure you've heard it on the news that let me find that article here. I want to get that covered. Yeah, a Boeing 777 flown by Malaysia Airlines went down, presumably in the ocean. They're thinking it went down somewhere between Kuala Lumpur and maybe Vietnam. It was on its way to Beijing. One thing is really being touted on this, and that is that it is suspected. Now, here again, you got to take this with a grain of salt. But the storyline that's going to be proposed is that two guys got on this airplane with false passports, and that their tickets were bought by some Iranian businessman. Okay, that is going to be talking points in the news. They are going to try to convince you that Iranian terrorists brought down this airplane. Now, we don't know. Nobody knows. They haven't even recovered any wreckage yet. I mean, they had one sighting of an oil spill, turned out to be, an oil tanker discharging its bilge. They thought they'd seen, what looked like a door from this airplane in a tail section. That turned out to be false. Right now, they're investigating a possibility of some debris floating in the water somewhere off northern Vietnam. They have not yet even recovered the wreckage. Nobody knows how this plane went down. Could have been simple mechanical failure. We don't know. 240 people are dead. We do know that. And it looks like they're already trying to blame the Iranians, even though no evidence is really on the table. You know, if you're one of the big shots, and you're oversight, you know, you're doing oversight on the intelligence community, you know, and you're all in favor of the NSA recording, you know, Gary's phone calls and Joe Blow's phone calls and Merkel's phone calls and anybody else's phone calls, and you're all in favor of intelligence gathering of every keystroke you type into your computer, every porn site you visit. You know, these folks pictured here are just so much in favor of all of this spying that's going on that, you know, they've signed on. They say, oh, yeah, we'll give you retroactive immunity. Everything's fine, hunky-dunky-dory fine. If you got nothing to hide, you shouldn't be worried about it. But I'll tell you what, when it comes out that the CIA might have been monitoring their computers, all of a sudden, this is just totally unacceptable. That is unacceptable behavior. Now, how about that? It's okay for them to spy on you. It's okay for them to spy on me. But the CIA had best not be spying on the Senate Intelligence Committee that's, you know, considering, you know, if the CIA should get a slap on the hand for their torture stuff and their black bagging of people and hauling them off to, you know, foreign countries where they can get away with doing naughty things. Yeah, the Senate Intelligence Committee right now is all up in arms because it's come out that they have been spied on. It's kind of like in Animal Farm. Did you ever read that book back when you were a kid? Animal Farm? All animals are created equal, but pigs are just a little bit more equal than others. Yeah, you guessed it. Poor BS meter's getting a workout tonight. Oh, boy. Remember them friendly folks at the TSA that helped you make sure you have a safe airplane flight, you know, so that no terrorists get on that airplane with you? And, you know, just because they occasionally break your laptop or they occasionally, you know, ask you to strip down and bend over while they put on a rubber glove, just because, you know, some of their tactics are a little bit uncomfortable. You know, we've learned to live with them because they're just part of the American travel landscape now, right? Right? I mean, you're tolerant, right? You put up with a lot of abuse, don't you? You're a good American. You're a good boy. You get some extra kibble tonight. Well, you know, say what you want about the TSA. I mean, you know, I'm not flying much these days because, you know, frankly, I just won't put up with that nonsense. But what I can't figure out, you know, I can understand the TSA putting out for bid, you know, 1,000 cases of latex gloves. I could understand that, you know, I can understand that. But what the hell is the TSA going to do with dynamite? Yeah, the TSA currently has a bid request out for a whole bunch of dynamite. Doesn't that give you a warm, fuzzy feeling to know that that TSA guy may not have a Beretta strapped to his side, but he may have a couple sticks of dynamite in his pants? Now, what the hell is going on with that? Please, somebody tell me, why does the TSA need to acquire large quantities of dynamite? Oh boy, how's my time going? Hopefully I've got time to get through these last two articles. I tell you, I bit off a little bit more than I could chew tonight, and I'm having to rush through some of them. I really rushed through that Ukraine coverage. There's a lot more to that Ukraine coverage, and I hope that, you know, if you have the time, you slip over to smartscarecrow.com, look for the blog entry for March 10th of 2014. I mean, March 10th, 2014. Look for that blog entry and take a look at some of the articles that I was researching for tonight's presentation. There's so much going on in the Ukraine. It's a very complicated situation, and you really should try and get the story from as many sides as you possibly can, because there's a lot of conflicting reports, like who provided the snipers. It's said that, the EU people are saying, it's probably this Svoboda outfit. It's a political party that's kind of hardline neo-Nazi fascist types. I mean, nobody wants to say they're Nazis because that was World War II, but we know what a Nazi is. They're nationalist socialists. Well, these people are extremely right-wing nationalists, and they are socialists in their economic leanings. So the Nazi moniker kind of applies. They're people to keep an eye on. But moving right along, I got to get through this next one. Okay, unless you've been living under a rock for the last 3 years, you know that something terrible went on in a place called Fukushima in Japan. A facility that housed, I think, a total of 6 nuclear reactors, had 4 of those reactors go yah-yah during an earthquake and a tsunami. It appears that at least 2, maybe 3 of those reactors have had what we used to refer to as the China syndrome. There was even a movie made about that, way back when, where the nuclear core melts clear out of the building down into the ground and starts heading for China. Well, because this is in Japan, I suspect if it was going to come out in China, if from the U.S. it was going to come out in China, from Japan it'll probably come out somewhere in Wyoming. I don't know. Bottom line is, they have been accumulating highly radioactive wastewater on the site of these reactors since they had this problem. Now, you got to pump a lot of water through these places to try to keep them as much under control as you possibly can. Some indications are that as much as 300 tons of this highly radioactive wastewater is already leaking into the oceans on a daily basis. Some say it might be as much as 1,000 tons of highly radioactive water leaking into the Pacific Ocean on a daily basis. Nobody really knows for sure. And if there is somebody out there who knows for sure, they're not saying. Problem is, a senior advisor at Tokyo Electric Power says controlled release into the sea is much safer than keeping contaminated water on site. And a senior advisor of the operator of the wrecked Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant has told the firm it may have no choice but to eventually dump hundreds of thousands of tons of highly radioactive contaminated water into the Pacific Ocean. They're being held in these big tanks. I've got a picture of it over my shoulder for those watching the video feed of this. They're held in these huge tanks. Some of these tanks were thrown together with very poor construction techniques. I mean, these things are leaking like sieves. They don't have a life expectancy of more than maybe 5 years under best case scenario, and they're damn near full. So what are they going to do with all this highly radioactive wastewater from trying to keep what's left of these reactors under control? You betcha. At some point or another, they're going to open the floodgates, and that stuff's going to wind up in the Pacific Ocean. I so loved salmon and Alaskan king crab. But I'll tell you what, I don't think that's on my plate anymore. Well, folks, I hear the music in the background. I've done enough barking at the moon for one night. I guess I'm going to have to bag it for this one. We'll see you again next week. Y'all take care now.
Calling out to you, won't you turn around? Oh, I'm calling out to you. Won't you won't you turn around? Oh, the point of no return is just ahead.